Hi guys, welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing a video talking about my triggers to avoid if you are a sufferer of health anxiety. So I've done a few videos in the past talking quite openly about my health anxiety. Only, I guess in the past year I've only really started openly talking about it, and I found such a profound effect on myself, but also it's been nice having messages from other people, even some friends who also suffer from health anxiety, and some complete strangers who might have read. I did a blog post last May, and I posted that online, and that seemed to get quite a lot of reaction of people relating to similar experiences that I had with my own health anxiety, and especially during this past year when health has been so dominant in our framing. You know, we've been at home and on lockdown, and I think there's been more triggering times than perhaps ever before for health anxiety. So I wanted to do a video talking about my triggers. And what I mean by triggers, and I'm assuming that if you're watching the video you are a sufferer of health anxiety, you might be watching it for a friend who suffers from health anxiety. When I say a trigger, I mean that it's something that can turn into health anxiety. So something happens, you see something, you hear something, you're actively doing something, then you keep doing it, and it becomes almost like a habit, and that trigger becomes more and more powerful and all consuming. And then I speak in my previous videos, if you've seen them or if you've read my blog post, I speak about how I sort of see it as there's anxiety in the moment, and there's sort of like the panic and those brief temporary anxieties, and then there's the ones that turn into something what I call a phase. So that's when triggers and habits and all of these things sort of spiral out of control for such a long time that it becomes so consuming that for a certain period of time that's all you can think about for that period of time, and that becomes quite scary, very scary in fact, and it's quite hard to deal with. I did a video I think in January this year just talking quite openly about sort of my own experiences quite openly and how affecting that can be sometimes. I think when I think back over, I did some CBT, which I talk about in that video as well, for my health anxiety, and I think something that came up a lot for myself in sort of me recognising that this is an anxiety is really recognising that I've discovered how impactful and how scary that is, and I think it's overlooked sometimes as, you know, hypochondria, and it doesn't feel like a real thing. But I think when you're really suffering from health anxiety, and I think people who maybe don't suffer from health anxiety perhaps dismiss it as perhaps sort of a mimic anxiety, or as if you do experience health anxiety, you know how scary and that can be. You know, that's a scary moment where, you know, you've convinced yourself that you have something. That's scary. That's really scary, and it is hard to deal with. And I think as much as there's so much advice that loads of people can give you, and there's loads of things that I can tell you to do and the triggers today, I think the first step to do is you've got to sort of figure out your own anxiety, because everyone's health anxiety is going to be different. People are triggered by different things. But these are the triggers that I've found affect me the most, and the triggers that I really try to avoid. But then it's really important to note that with triggers, you're avoiding these, and you should avoid these. But the more you try and push away something and sort of shut your eyes and pretend something doesn't exist, the more it can really come up and bite you on the arse. It's not facing the issue head on, it's sort of almost taking, you know, paracetamol to mask a symptom. That probably is a trigger, what I just said, but in that sort of an analogy I just thought of, it's sort of like taking paracetamol to mask a symptom without getting to the cause of what that symptom is. I can't believe I just described that in a health anxiety video. I'm sorry if that triggered you in any way. That's sort of my look at it. You know, if you're sort of avoiding things your whole life, then you've not really dealt with your health anxiety. But these are triggers that I think you should limit. I've limited, and I found that it's had a big effect on how I let things spiral out of control. The first one is probably a really obvious one, and probably something that straight away friends and family will tell you to do, but it's don't excessively Google. Now you might say like things, and I would say things like sometimes the doctors don't have all the information, and you need to find out what you should do. You need to be proactive, and it's really important for me. I think I've always been in this mentality. I've got to make sure that everything's found straight away, which causes, I think, my anxiety. So I think really creating a limit for Googling. I think the first step to do is don't do that. I think the first step is call your GP. Monitor your symptoms and see a GP, because I think that's what I do before I get to the point where I'm like, I need to seek out what this is because I'm noticing this big symptom and I'm worried that that could be something. But what Googling excessively does is, I'm going to tell you this now, and this is the hardest thing I deal with, is everything could be something. Like, anything could be something, and that's so scary. But at the same time, that's the reason why Googling then is such a trigger, is because you type in any symptom and you're going to have the most probable solutions, and the NHS is going to tell you that you're okay, that you're most likely fine. However, there is a chance that it could be this life-threatening disease. And you're like, okay, great, now I'm anxious. Now I'm going to Google that disease. Now I'm going to look at them symptoms of that disease and match them to, maybe have I felt that? Maybe did I feel that recently? Did I feel that headache recently as well? Did I get that as well? I did. I've got that. And then you're in a phase because you're convinced you've got that, and the doctor's telling you you've got something else, and everyone's like, you're fine, you've got that, but you're convinced you've got that. The worst thing. And then that affects your mental health badly, and you're in a spiral of health anxiety, and why is no one listening to me, and I need help, but no, there's no help fast enough. So my first one is, you need to limit that. I think Googling is inevitable with anything, but I think it really has to be justified before you're Googling if you suffer from health anxiety. Don't go searching for anything that's a rare thing as well. Sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I'm this 1 in 10 million that's going to go against the odds and be that one, because it's like, oh, 1 in 10 million 20-year-old did get this. Don't look at that. Focus on what your GP is telling you. Doctors aren't always right though, so that is annoying. So I can tell you that as well, that gives them even more health anxiety. But yeah, the first thing, don't limit the time maybe as well, because for me it's always been once at night. So if it's like not 10 at night and then I start Googling something, I'm going to be anxious all night about that. And then more often than not, I wake up, the symptom's gone and the anxiety's gone, but I've just wasted a night being anxious in a whole anxious frenzy over thinking that I've got something. So yes, my first tip, limit your Googling and excessive Googling. I think it's inevitable that you're going to Google something. We're human. We want to figure out, ourselves, our bodies matter, but limit it to a certain time. I try not to Google at all anymore unless it's really, really something that I need to look up, and then I really try to think logically and don't then go Googling the worst case scenarios before I've had tests, before I've spoken to a GP, because it's not going to help anything. It's really not. Just really try and think logically of, it's the fine balance of being proactive and taking care of your body and taking care of your health and making sure you're okay, fine. But then there's the fine line of then excessively consuming everything about you of a small possibility that you found on Google. That's my first one, and I hope that's not confusing, because it is quite confusing and my own anxiety is confusing, but I think that's my first bit of advice. My second trigger that I found quite triggering is when I hear about a disease on TV or film that I haven't heard before, and then I look into that disease excessively, possibly on Google again, so it sort of relates to the last one, but I can think of 3 phases that I've had what have lasted a certain amount of time when I was in my teenage years and a couple of years ago that have come from me watching a television show, and a character in that television show has got a disease that I did not know was a disease, and that character would have a certain amount of symptoms. You might go, how can I avoid this? And you can avoid it by watching it and not then Googling it after. give it a week. If after a week you're like, okay, I do still have symptoms from that, then okay, fair. Maybe then see your doctor. But if you right then and there go, did I feel like that this morning? Did that guy just have that on that TV? Do I have that? So I think my advice for anything on TV or film, give it a week before you then Google your symptoms or speak to a doctor. Actually, don't Google, just speak to the doctor first. But give it a week and see if them symptoms are there for a week and if you still remember them. Because sometimes I imagine, I'm like, have I had that symptom? And I don't think I even have. It's just something that I've like put upon myself to have. The third one, and this one is sort of when you're going through a phase or going through an anxious thing. And this is sort of as well tricky because it's inevitable that you're going to do it, but it's about limiting it. And it's seeking reassurance from friends and family. And what it does is it gives you that momentary bliss of things. So, do you think I have this? Do you think I have this? And it gives you that momentary bliss of, okay, they're telling me I'm okay. Someone in the world is telling me that I'm okay. And you have a temporary, like, abandonment of the anxiety. And it's nice. And it's sort of, let's take a step back and it's gone for a second. And then it comes back again. And then you seek it again from someone else or the same person. And it becomes excessive and it becomes more of this obsession that you have. Well, this is what I found. I can't tell you obviously what you have. But this is what I found with my own anxiety. And it becomes this whole obsession of the anxiety that I'm feeling and the Googling and the looking up the disease and then contacting friends. It's all that spiralling out of control and constantly like it just adds to that sort of cloud in the sky that you're sort of putting there yourself because nothing's concrete telling you that you have anything yet. And I think for me always the worst part is sort of no one's helping me, so you seek out friends to reassure you, don't you? It's natural to do, but I think you should only do that again. I try not to do that at all anymore, and it's made a big difference. I can promise you it's made a big difference. I think waiting a week after the TV shows, not Googling that excessively, and then if I am worried about something, and if I'm really feeling anxious, messaging friends it does make it worse. It really does, because it makes it more real. Because if it's just sort of with yourself, you're sort of like, okay, like, you're feeling anxious, but then as soon as you then ask a friend, do you think I have this disease? Sometimes you might go, I don't know, speak to your doctor. And that's going to give you even more anxiety. But what you should do, and what I do, is and what I would say do before you even mention the illnesses, say to your friend, I think I'm feeling quite anxious about my health anxiety. Say that. Maybe, but do not mention the thing that you think you have. And they might ask you, but you go, I'm trying to limit my triggers today. Then see how your symptoms are maybe after 2 days. Then maybe mention that symptom again, if it's still there, and say it to your friend and go, I've still got this symptom. Should I worry? But that's even quite a triggering thing. So maybe even wait longer than 2 days. I'm just thinking out loud now about that. I would say maybe wait a few more days. I think because it's only going to make it more real in your head, even though it isn't real. And I think I spoke in my previous video about this and in my blog post and when I've spoke about it with other people who suffer from health anxiety. Something that was a breakthrough moment for me was just saying, when I'm feeling health anxiety, I'm feeling anxious right now about health. I'm feeling anxious about health right now. And that made a massive difference because that put something real on what was happening. That sort of contained sort of the craziness from getting out of control. And I could still maybe see the GP, still get a test. But I could still try and limit the I'm feeling health anxiety now, and then it avoids it sort of coming into a phase just by doing that, going, I feel anxiety right now, maybe I'll wait till tomorrow. And it's so hard to do, and that's so easy for me to go, just put a lid on it, because some nights I cannot. But I found generally, since I've done my CBT, and since I've limited my triggers, the ones that I'm mentioning now, I've seen a big difference. I don't suffer from health anxiety as much as I used to. It doesn't affect my quality of life as much when it still does. Sometimes it will creep up, there'll be something that's just incontrollable because there's always going to be a lump that's going to appear somewhere, and there's always going to be there's always something, and that's so hard to deal with. But I'm telling you that limiting your triggers will make these less frequent and hopefully just eliminate them completely. I think the times when I have felt anxiously recently, maybe in this past 6 months, which are very few, and I'm grateful for that. But there was one specific this year, which I even did a post when I was going through that phase. I was doing all of these things. I was Googling in the moment, I was seeking reassurance from a friend, and then I did manage, luckily, to stop seeking reassurance from a couple of friends, and then I did manage to go, okay, I'm suffering from health anxiety now. And then it was nice actually also to contact other people who are suffering from health anxiety. A final few triggers that I would say avoid is medical conversations with friends. I think if that topic is sort of there and you know it's going to spark something, because it does with me, just go to the toilet for a second, just remove yourself from the situation. Again, it's like the paracetamol thing, you can't avoid the topic of health forever. You know, COVID's in the world and it's on our screens every day. But just try and remove yourself from maybe that conversation for a second, or just go, I suffer from health anxiety, so this conversation might be a trigger for me. And hopefully your friends will understand that. So I think that's one of the things I've mentioned. And a final trigger, I think, which is really hard to deal with, and another one is not accepting actual medical advice. And that might sound like a weird trigger, like what does that mean? How would that trigger me? But sometimes I don't believe a test. I don't know why. I don't believe a test that sometimes is 99.9%, but I'm still like, I could be that 0.1%. Nothing is certain. You've got to trust that test, and that's so hard to do, but you're only gonna get more into your head and add to that cloud if you don't trust actual medical advice and tests. Of course, doctors don't know everything, and it's really important to be proactive with your own health and question. I ask so many questions when I see the doctors, because I'm like, but this, but that, but this, but maybe that's not for me, but maybe this, but maybe that, and make sure they cover all bases, and they probably are like, oh god, John's here again. But that's fine, that's okay. But I don't question anything that comes back. I can sort of sit with a test when it comes back, and that sounds a really weird trigger. And I wish I had better advice over how to sort of help with that, but all of these things, from the Googling, from the TV and film, from the conversations with friends, from the asking friends for reassurance, all of these things pool into a constant flow of negative thoughts that just keep on spiralling. And I explored this in my CBT, and if you've probably had CBT for health anxiety, you'd probably be the same. And I wrote down all of the triggers that trigger me, and it just spirals out of control. And if it turns into a phase, you've probably got 3 months where you, maybe longer, maybe less, where you think you've got something, and you're not going to get that time back. And that's so sad, because you're going to have that awful cloud over you. So yeah, that's my advice. So I would just say, try and avoid them triggers. Try and limit them triggers. Some of them are unavoidable. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe. Any questions you have about health anxiety, please pop it below. And thank you for watching. I hope if you're suffering from health anxiety, this has helped in some way. All of them, I think, just, it's being logical of just maybe trying to take a few days away from the triggers, then come back and see if you feel different. Has the symptom gone? If the symptom has gone after a few days, what's that symptom there? If it's still there, then I'm going to seek advice. I think that's sort of my final word on the case. But I hope you enjoyed. Thank you. Please subscribe and like and comment below. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys.